Our discussion today focuses on a critical theme: climate change, governance and the risks of inaction, protecting water, energy and environmental rights for vulnerable groups. Why this topic? Because ethnic minorities often live in ecologically and economically fragile regions. This makes them especially vulnerable to climate risks. One striking example is the desertification around Lake Urmia, once one of the largest salt lakes in the world. Today, the region suffers from salt storms, highly damaging to public health. But this is not just about ecology. These communities already face systemic discrimination in access to water, electricity, jobs and infrastructure. Climate change, combined with insufficient governance by the Iranian authorities, further exacerbates a situation already undermined by linguistic discrimination, particularly through the ban on education in the mother tongue, social exclusion, economic marginalisation, recurring political repression, as well as forced migration resulting from drought and the implementation of large-scale projects. In short, national and ethnic minorities in Iran face a double burden: environmental vulnerability and marginalisation on economic, cultural, linguistic and political grounds. Our speakers will address this issue from different perspectives. Thank you.
Aujourd'hui, nos intervenants, ils vont parler sur le sujet, sur les différents angles. It is now my honor to give the floor to Professor Mai Sato, a Special Rapporteur by video, please.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Mai Sato, the UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation on the Islamic Republic of Iran. I'm deeply honored to contribute to this vital discussion on climate change, governance, and the protection of environmental rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Environmental problems are fundamentally a human rights issue that manifests more acutely in the lives of marginalized communities. What we are witnessing in Iran exemplifies how environmental degradation becomes a multiplier of existing inequalities, disproportionately affecting minoritized communities who have contributed least to the problem but bear its heaviest burden. The situation in the Islamic Republic of Iran represents an example of how centralized environmental governance, combined with limited transparency and weak oversight, compounds climate crisis, resulting in environmental injustice. Based on information that I have received since starting my mandate, this issue is affecting various regions and different groups across the country. For example, in Khuzestan, the Hura Azim wetlands, once a vital ecological cultural system for Arab communities, have been destroyed. Karke Dam has reduced the river's floodplain by approximately 90%, transforming fertile farmland into unusable salt-laden earth. Oil sector activities have built roads through the wetlands and introduced hazardous wastes into waterways and soils, contributing to biodiversity loss and heightened fire and flood risks. Families who have depended on farming, hunting and reedcraft for generations now face displacement and poverty, while at the same time, communities report limited accountability and see little local benefit from regional oil wealth. In Azerbaijani provinces of East and West Azerbaijan, Lake Urmia, once among the region's greatest hypersaline lakes, reportedly lost 98% of its volume over 2 decades, with recent reports suggesting complete dryness. Around Ajabshir and Rahmanu Port, the desiccated lake beds drive salt-laden dust storms that travel hundreds of kilometers, threatening public health and livelihoods. Diminished humidity and rainfall are linked to unprecedented heat episodes. Soil salination undermines agriculture in places like Tabriz, Ajabshir, and Shabestar. Industrial mining pollution risks, including waste lagoon bridges near Marageh and the Sangun copper complex, compound water and soil contamination in the region. For the Baluch people in Sistan and Balochistan province, I've received reports of prolonged droughts alternating with destructive floods, compounding by weak water governance and transboundary tensions over Hirman River that degrade the Harmon wetlands, and the fuel dust storms affecting Zabul. Chronic underinvestment and limited access to basic services increase vulnerability. And at the same time, promised development such as the Chabaha corridor has delivered uneven benefits amid sanctions and mismanagement. In Turkoman Sahra, communities face their own distinct environmental challenges compounded by marginalization and limited representation in environmental governance. Like other regions, they experience the intersection of climate vulnerability and inadequate state support, creating conditions where environmental degradation becomes a driver for further marginalization. The situation facing Kurdish communities also deserves attention. The recent wildfires around Sunandaj and Marivan in 2024-2025 exposed chronic gaps in prevention and emergency response. I've received reports of environmental defenders losing their lives responding to fires that could have been prevented or contained with adequate resource allocation. All these examples are not isolated incidents or inevitable consequences of climate change. They appear to result from failures in environmental governance characterized by centralization that excludes local communities from decision-making processes that fundamentally affect their livelihoods and lives. According to information received, there is lack of transparency in large infrastructure projects without adequate environmental impact assessment. Weak accountability mechanisms allow environmental degradation to proceed unchecked, often benefiting extractive industries while exposing costs on vulnerable populations. Perhaps most concerning is the securitization of environmental issues that treats environmental activism as a security threat rather than recognizing it as an essential civic participation in sustainable development. The human rights implications of continued inaction are severe and far-reaching. I've received reports of forced displacement as environmental degradation renders traditional livelihoods impossible, health crises from air, water pollution, cultural destruction as traditional ways of life become unsustainable, intergenerational injustices as children and young people bear the costs of environmental mismanagement in the future, and economic marginalization of minoritized communities. A fundamental reform of environmental governance based on human rights principles is necessary. This requires meaningful participation of affected communities in environmental decision-making, recognizing their contextual knowledge and legitimate interest. Communities should have access to information about environmental policies, projects, and their potential impacts, enabling informed community engagement. Environmental defenders, who play a crucial role in early warning systems and community-based environmental protection, must be protected. The environmental issues facing Iran's minority communities is a microcosm of global challenges, but it also offers lessons for more sustainable management and just approaches to environmental governance. In human rights terms, the right to health is undermined by contaminated water resources, toxic dust storms, and hazardous industrial waste. The right to an adequate standard of living could be violated as traditional livelihoods become impossible due to environmental degradation. The right to water and sanitation could be denied through mismanaged water resources and contaminated supplies. Cultural rights could be eroded as environmental destruction makes traditional ways of life unsustainable. The right to participation in public affairs could be curtailed through the exclusion of affected communities from environmental decision-making. And finally, the rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly could be violated through the persecution of environmental defenders. As many of you know, this mandate has traditionally not focused on environmental issues, but since taking up this role a year ago, I have learned so much more about this issue, and I would like to continue paying attention to this important area. These issues clearly also fall within the mandate of several of my colleagues in the UN Special Procedures. They are the Special Rapporteur on issues of human rights obligations relating to enjoyment of a safe, clean, healthy and sustainable environment, the Special Rapporteur on the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation, the Special Rapporteur on the right to food, the Special Rapporteur on adequate housing, the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders, the Special Rapporteur on minority issues. This is all to say that I am committed to working collaboratively with all these mandate holders to ensure a coordinated and comprehensive response to these interconnected human rights violations. And finally, I want to thank the Association for the Defense of Human Rights of Azerbaijanis of Iran for organizing this event and for having me and for bringing together such an important voices to this crucial event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for Special Rapporteur Professor Mai Sato.